Well, it's been over a month now since version 1.0 for 7 Days to Die was publicly released for PC and console players, so I wanted to take a minute to talk about one of the biggest changes that version 1.0 brought, which was an overhaul to traders and quest progression. Some people like the changes that have been made, while others seemingly really don't, so it's one of the most controversial changes from version 1.0. And today I'm going to explain not only what these changes are, but also why some of them needed to be implemented, so let's just jump straight into it. First, let's talk about the introduction of quest tier points and how they work. Quest tier points are earned from completing missions, and each tier of missions earns you a different amount of points. You have to have a certain amount of points to unlock other tiers of missions from traders. So for example, you start with tier 1 quests by default, which only earn you 1 tier point for completing each tier 1 mission. Then to unlock tier 2 quests, you need to have 10 quest tier points, which means you have to do 10 tier 1 missions. Once you unlock tier 2 quests, you'll get 2 points for completing each tier 2 mission, and so on. This pattern continues all the way up to tier 6 missions, where you'll get 6 quest tier points for completing tier 6 missions. The amount of quest tier points you have can be tracked by simply going to the quest section and looking on the left hand side. There you'll notice it not only shows you the overall amount of quest tier points you have, but also how many more you need to unlock the next tier of missions. And that takes us to our next change to traders and quests, which is the daily quest limit. Now this was heavily criticized by the 7 Days to Die community to the point where multiple online articles were being published regarding the discourse. And if I'm being completely honest, I do think that the fun pimps did do a good thing here, and some of the hate was unjustified. So basically, if you didn't know, before the introduction of the daily quest limit, players could do as many quests as they wanted in a single day and potentially unlock higher tiers of missions quicker, especially when playing with multiple people. This was, as I'm sure you can imagine, just a smudge but overpowered, because if you had a full party of 8 friends, each of you could get a mission from the trader and just tag team it, rewarding you all with not only loot but also a quest tier point. And since in the Alpha 21 version of the game you only needed to do 7 of each tier of missions to unlock the next tier, it meant you could essentially do 1 round of everyone's missions and have enough quest points to unlock tier 2 missions straight away, and you could just repeat this all the way up to tier 6. So the fun pimp solution to fixing this was 2 things. The first was the introduction of the controversial daily quest limit, which by default was 3. What this meant is that you could do multiple missions in a single day, but you'd only get quest tier points for the first 3 missions, and after that any mission completed would only reward you with the loot and XP. The second thing the fun pimps did was making it so that you could no longer earn any quest tier points from doing quests with friends if the quest was not your own. You would still get loot and XP, but any quest completed for your friends would not count towards your quest tier points. Now they did allow players to up the daily quest limit from its default, which is 4, to unlimited, which was nice, but it still didn't make everyone happy. See, the current biggest gripe people still hold over this entire thing is that because they've made it so that you can earn any quest tier points when doing quests with friends, it inherently destroys co-op questing, as what's the point? Yes, you can still get XP and of course loot, and it does make completing harder quests easier, but overall it means that you aren't progressing and unlocking higher tiers of missions. And another thing that needs to be brought while we're talking about quests is a reduction in loot that you get from completing them. This was one of the lighter complaints people had when talking about the trader and quest changes with version 1.0, as many had said for a very long time that the rewards for completing quests were just too overpowered and needed to be adjusted. Now it's hard to say exactly how much they did nerf the rewards, but from everything I've seen online it seems like tier 1 to tier 3 missions still give reasonable rewards, but nothing overpowered. However, tier 4 to tier 6 rewards can be sometimes rather lame. To give you an example of the before and after, here's some loot from a tier 6 mission that someone completed over on the 7 Days to Die subreddit from before version 1.0 was released. As you can see, this person got 10,350 dukes, 33,000 XP, and some pretty good reward options. And this is the loot someone got from a tier 6 mission after version 1.0 was released. As you can see, the person got 6,000 dukes, which is a huge decrease, 36,000 XP, and some honestly remarkably lame reward options. And here's a visual representation of the rewards difference for completing a tier 1 quest, specifically a clear the area quest. As you'll see, this is some footage of me streaming on Alpha 21 handing in the quest and getting 800 dukes, 4,500 XP, and some decent reward options, mainly the 9mm ammo and shotgun ammo. And here is me in version 1.0 handing in the exact same mission, but this time only getting 400 dukes, 3,000 XP, and some rather lame rewards. So now that we've covered all the changes to traders and quests, let's talk about why traders have been needing to be nerfed for a while. For years prior to version 1.0's release, people had been talking and complaining about how traders and quests were way too overpowered. It got to the point where you had people genuinely asking why no one had made mods for the PC version to change and rebalance the trading system, as seemingly the fun pimps had no intent of doing so. And in that respect, there actually was a mod created by somebody called 7 Days to Die Rebalance, which is a comprehensive overhaul of 7 Days to Die's loot, trader, and mission systems along with other things. So the 3 main changes to traders and quests have been needed for a very long time. Scaling up the number of quests you need to unlock the next quest tier was a great step in the right direction, and so was the addition of the visible way to track how many quest tier points you have and need to move on to the next tier. Although it might not seem like much going from 7 quests to 10, it's a nice amount and it makes tracking or calculating how many quests you need to do to get to the next tier much easier. Then there is a daily quest limit. Although it was and still is a controversial change, I honestly don't mind it. If you think about it, it slows down how fast you can progress through the game, making you enjoy the experience for longer, and although you could just chalk that up to the fun pimps trying to fan up the runtime for a playthrough, I do think it's it's a good solution. If you only get 3 missions worth of quest tier points each day, you'll only unlock tier 2 quests by day 4, then it would take you until day 8 to unlock tier 3 missions, then until day 12 for you to unlock tier 4 missions, day 16 for tier 5 missions, and finally day 20 for tier 6 missions. That is if you manage to do the maximum of 3 missions every single day and always do the highest tier available. So if each day is 60 minutes long by default, that's around 20 hours of playtime before you manage to reach the highest quest tier, which sounds right if you ask me, but that's just my opinion. Then we've got the loot and reward changes, which again were needed, as before the changes you didn't even need to loot locations as much, as you mainly just grind quests for the end reward and dukes. Then you'd either just get exactly what you wanted as a reward from doing the missions, or you'd just be able to buy it with all the dukes that you had earned. And that would in turn usually bypass the need to craft anything like weapons, as usually the weapons that traders had were better. So this change in loot is better, but still it's not perfect, and I'm sure the fun pimps still need to change some things with it. But I do genuinely believe it's a positive change, as it makes you have to focus on both looting and completing quests. And this is why I believe traders and quests needed to be nerfed. And with that being said, everybody, that is the end of this video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you did go to enjoy it, please be sure to share with your friends, drop a like, and let me know in the comment section your thoughts about the trader and quest changes. Additionally, be sure to subscribe and turn the notification bell to stay notified when I release any other 7 Days to Die content on my channel. And other than that, guys, thank you all so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.